Yeah, I want to mention briefly, or briefly talk about a very specific little snafu, which was committed by a member of Netanyahu's cabinet. You've probably heard of it. I'm a little bit late to the shot right now because I've been on vacation, but the news continues to happen, and I, bravely, tenaciously continue to report on it, just late and from my house at my leisure. So anyway, yeah, true, the apex of journalistic bravery here, equal to the Reuters, Associated Press, and UN workers who have died in Gaza, dozens of them, at the hands of Israeli missile strikes, bombs, and what have you. So a little while ago, by a little while ago, I mean like a week ago or so, a guy, the heritage minister of Israel, Amichai Eliyahu, that was my best effort. Okay, don't judge me. I'm American. He did something a little wacky. So, if asked on the radio if Israel should throw a nuclear bomb at Gaza, Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu responded, "That's one option." Now, much was made of this. Immediately following this statement, Netanyahu suspended him from, I believe, future cabinet meetings, suggesting a degree of displeasure at what he said publicly. And I want to talk about this because I feel like this little snafu is actually incredibly indicative of the current attitude towards Gaza present in Netanyahu's cabinet, and therefore, like, the direction they might be taking things. So, first of all, heritage minister. I don't think there's anyone called a heritage minister in the United States presidential cabinet. But if you look this guy up, the heritage minister specifically, by the way, the term heritage minister right off the bat gives off immense Hitler particles, like it's like Ministry of Culture shit, like here's the guy who's trying to protect our people and our tradition. It's not necessarily Hitlerite. It's just a role that emanates Hitler particles. And wow, we Google him. Far right Israeli politician and activist. Okay, there we go. Hitler particles confirmed, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look at that. They mentioned right here the nuclear weapons bit. So he lives in the West Bank because, of course, he does. He's not happy unless he lives in a home he personally wrested from Palestinian indigenous people. And, there's not much to his Wikipedia page outside of the comment on nuclear weapons, possibly because, yeah, it looks like he just got his kick up in 2022. So man's still young. Look at him. Young and full of life, maybe. Somebody else's life, possibly. In an interview with Radio Kol Barama during the 2023 Israel-Hamas war, hate this term, that's not what it is. What war? What war is happening? There are 10,000 people dead, civilians, 10,000 civilians dead. Like, what war? Eliyahu claimed that the use of nuclear weapons was one of the possibilities when discussing Israel's options in its ongoing military action in the Gaza Strip. He also endorsed the displacement of Gaza's Palestinian population, stating, quote, "They can go to Ireland or deserts." The reason they're saying Ireland is because the nation of Ireland has been, uncharacteristically for a European nation, supportive of the Palestinian people and ready to denounce Israel's behavior. The monsters in Gaza should find a solution by themselves. He also objected to humanitarian aid entering Gaza, saying, quote, "We wouldn't hand the Nazis humanitarian aid." Oh, this guy would, for sure, because he's one of them, right? And that there were no, quote, "uninvolved civilians in Gaza." So I've said this before, but like the question as to whether or not there is genocidal intent behind Israel's behavior in Gaza is hilarious, because if you look at like half the members of Netanyahu's cabinet and you hold a microphone up to their mouth, they'll literally just be like, "Yeah, we want to ethnically displace all of them. They're all inherently biologically evil. We want to kill all of them. They're all monsters. They should get no food or what." Like it's like there's no ambiguity at all. The mere suggestion that there is any effort at like humanitarian or sort of like abstemious behavior on Israel's part is in and of itself like genocide denial. Like it would be it's essentially like the argument that that which, and this is something that Holocaust deniers say, that the number of people who died in concentration camps wasn't deliberate. It was because they were starved out when the Allies bombed the trains that were bringing food and resources to the camps. This is total bullshit. It's a way of displacing the harm done to the millions of people the Nazis killed onto the Allies. It's just a cheap lie. And it takes the guise of humanitarian posturing, right? Where it's like, oh, all those people died. That's so sad. If only the Allies hadn't let that happen. And it's essentially like that, like, all those thousands and thousands of Palestinian civilians dying. Oh, it's so sad. But uh, Israel's trying all it can, just like how Germany tried all it could. It's total bullshit. I don't mean to imply, by the way, that like the scale of disaster is even remotely comparable between what's happening in Gaza and the Holocaust. Only that the logic is fundamentally the same. I think it's really important to identify and call out the underlying logic, because a person like the Israeli officials who are using this language to justify the death of 10,000 Palestinian civilians would do the same to justify the death of 6 million Palestinian civilians. They would. Because that gap doesn't exist. Whatever series of arguments and rationalizations one could use to sort of write this behavior off, like it scales infinitely. Like we've seen this time and time again through history. The logic is the issue. There's not some arbitrary numerical threshold where it's like, okay, well, before this point, there's an acceptable level of like genocidal rhetoric, but after that point, everyone comes to their senses. It's not how that happens historically. Like we saw it in Germany as the scale of destruction increased and increased and increased. There wasn't a point where the German civilians or like the Nazi officials or whatever were like, whoa, I was okay with the night of broken glass, but not with this. That's just not how that works. You have to call that shit out immediately. But anyway. So this guy was on the radio and he was asked, would nuclear option be off the table in Gaza? And he said that it would be on the table. Now, why did he say that? Well, first of all, he wants to posture as like super far right, ultra anti-Palestinian minister of heritage. So of course he has to posture as the strongman and go like, yeah, dude, we'd totally glass them. That's one. For two, there are two ways you can interpret this with regards to complicity from Netanyahu's cabinet. This guy was kicked out of future cabinet meetings, but not removed entirely, because as you see in this initial article, he still voted in a cabinet meeting over the phone, which makes me think that his removal from the cabinet meetings was more of a performative gesture to punish him for being stupid enough to acknowledge the Israeli government's policy on nuclear weapons publicly than it is some kind of like actual denunciation. My personal guess is that because Netanyahu and the members of his cabinet are, and I need to be clear on this, insane. They are insane. They are insane. Because they're like that, internally, they probably have discussed the use of nuclear weapons. I doubt they would actually use them, but they've discussed it. And I think that internally their line is it's on the table. And the heritage minister was stupid enough to say that publicly, whereas Israel has usually been pretty coy in the public about their nuclear policy, largely because if you look it up, it's also pretty insane. Very I'm taking you all out with me attitude towards nuclear weapons there, which, great geopolitical ally of ours, really fostering our interests in the Middle East. I'm telling you, our continued support of Israel is going to tank any hope we have of Middle Eastern stability, not just for it, but also because we can't deal with Iran and negotiate with them and prevent them from acquiring nuclear weapons as long as Israel keeps threatening them and killing their... I don't think Israel is going to nuke Gaza. I think that even the cranks in Netanyahu's cabinet are aware of the fact that if they did that, it would result in unavoidable international denunciation, even from the United States. I think that the Biden administration has gone beyond the pale in supporting genocide in Gaza. I think their behavior is disgusting. But I mean, pardon me for being optimistic here, but I do think that if they nuked Gaza, that would earn condemnation. I do think that. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I never find out. But I do think that internally they're still banting it about as like a potential option. The fact that it's being listed as a potential option is, again, speculation on my part. It's possible that this guy just spoke off the cuff entirely, but to be honest with you, I don't believe that. I mean, Israel has been so coy with its nuclear policy for so long, and they're so unwilling to put any like self-limitations on the table because it's anti-Semitic to suggest that you might do anything to prevent the death of civilians. Just a reminder of how crazy they are, I guess. If nothing else, I think it's maybe a reminder that they haven't gone that far, that Netanyahu understands that this guy needs to be like publicly denounced in some fashion. Through his removal, though I don't know if Netanyahu actually denounced the comments. It's possible he just removed him from the cabinet meetings, which kind of implies like even in response to that, Netanyahu isn't comfortable taking nuclear weapons off the table. I don't know. It's not good. Oh, for those who think that Israel gives a fuck about the hostages, by the way, the heritage minister also said in response to the radio question, in war we pay a price. Why are the lives of hostages held in Gaza more important than the lives of the soldiers? So Literally, like right there, the entire pretense of them doing this to rescue the hostages is just gone instantly. By in saying that the lives of the soldiers are more important than the hostages, you're essentially saying that there's no reason for you to be there other than ethnic cleansing because you are trading the lives of soldiers for the lives of hostages. Insane. Oh, Netanyahu did condemn the statement. Okay, that's good. Israel and the IDF are operating in accordance with the highest standards of international law to avoid harming innocents. We will continue to do so until our victory. Okay, great, nice. All right, well, that's good. That's just great. That's fantastic. Yes. All right, well, keep on keeping on, people. And if you're watching this, Netanyahu and or Minister of Culture, stop. Cut it out, please. Minister of Heritage, not Minister of Culture. They sound and feel very similar. Anyway.